Hello and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily. This is a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, co-founder, chief academic officer here at Newsella, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So each week on Friday, we do a weekly roundup of the past week's AI-related news for educators. And this week, we have 3 stories for you about the lack of guidance and research on evaluating AI tools, the messiness of doing so, and all of this happening while the AI itself is evolving faster than measurement can keep pace with. As we know, districts across the country are spending millions of dollars on AI tools. A lot of it's being spent by districts that don't yet know whether what they're buying actually works and how well they've defined works. As part of their evaluation, districts are being asked to consider multiple criteria at once. For example, does it improve student outcomes? Is it safe? What happens to the student data? Is the AI explainable? Does it introduce bias? And so on. All of that's not really news. This has been an open question with regard to education technology for decades. And there's been a tension between the pace with which products develop and the pace with which they can be evaluated. What is news, though, is that this tension is even greater with AI. There is a felt lack of available research and limited state guidance. The Institute of Education Sciences recently tried to fill that gap by looking at what research actually says about AI and learning, and the answer is, perhaps not surprisingly, complicated. So let's take a moment to review what they found. The strongest evidence is not for general-purpose chatbots. When students use a ChatGPT or Claude to do their thinking for them, the research shows lower exam performance, shallower learning, weaker recall, less reasoning. This is what we've been calling cognitive offloading, or more extreme, cognitive surrender. When AI is deliberately structured to support thinking, however, that is, when it prompts or questions, when it gives feedback, when it helps teachers see where students are struggling, it's a different story. Students using AI products specifically designed for pedagogy performed as well as or better than students working with human tutors alone. The difference between those two scenarios is the design, what the AI is actually asking the student to do, and the role that the teacher is playing. For example, San Antonio ISD saw 6th grade reading passage rates jump from 32% to 45% at Tafola Middle School, which is quite a significant gain. But the story behind the story is a little more complicated. The district was piloting Course Mojo, an AI literacy tool designed to give students immediate feedback and give teachers visibility into where students were struggling. They started with a single 6th grade classroom for 5 days, then expanded it to half the 6th grade population. It's the kind of structured, teacher-mediated AI that the Institute of Education Sciences describes as the more promising implementation of AI. And yet, 6th grade gains at Tafola don't tell the whole story. Other grades and schools showed smaller improvements, flat results, or even declines. The results were mixed enough that you can't really say that AI caused them. Teachers were still actively involved, students were receiving other supports, and the schools had literacy initiatives underway. This is the kind of cocktail approach that many districts employ when they're trying to reach students in need of intervention. We can see gains, but we can't really isolate what caused them. I saw this same kind of result 15 years ago when I was running evaluations of some of the same products that are still in the market today. That's the district procurement problem in a nutshell. You can find evidence of positive outcomes, but you still have to ask whether the AI caused them, whether the tool was implemented in the same way across classrooms, whether the results will hold up over time. This is the messy work of teaching and learning in school. Another big item in the news this week was something that Anthropic is building into Claude itself. Starting with Claude models launched in the EU on or after August 2nd of this year, the company is embedding machine-readable watermarks directly into the text that Claude generates. The watermark is invisible and should withstand copying, pasting, and some minor editing. It travels with the output, whether Claude is used in the consumer app through the API or through cloud platforms. But to be clear, it's not an AI detector. Anthropic is very clear about that, because finding an AI watermark doesn't tell you who wrote the ideas behind the text. The student could write an entire essay themselves, ask Claude to proofread it, for example, and end up with marked output. Conversely, edited or paraphrased Claude text might not even carry a readable mark. It's newsworthy, though, because it represents a shift in how we might think about evaluation of student work. Instead of trying to guess after the fact whether a machine wrote something, which is what a lot of detectors are currently doing, we're moving toward a world where the machine itself might tell us that it touched something. It's a different kind of problem. You might call it provenance rather than guilt or innocence. For districts that are drowning in evaluation decisions, this may have a big impact. If you're spending millions of dollars on AI tools and struggling to know whether they work, and at the same time, the tools are building transparency infrastructure directly into themselves, it means that the framework for evaluating AI in your school may need to shift. It can't just be, does this improve learning? It needs to also include, can we understand what the AI actually did, what role it played, and was that contribution permitted for this assignment? So in a nutshell, what we're seeing this past week is that districts are spending real money on AI. Some of that money is being spent on tools that are well-designed and teacher-mediated, and some of it's being wasted on products that don't deliver on their promises. The research suggests that design and implementation matter enormously, far more than just having the technology. And meanwhile, the ground is shifting under our feet. The companies building the tools are beginning to add transparency features directly into their platforms, which could help us understand the role that AI played in a student's work. However you look at it, that's still a fair amount of work for districts to do. You've got to decide what the threshold of evidence is that matters to you, as we were talking about yesterday. San Antonio's mixed results are a pretty good example of this. You got to know your own instructional priorities well enough to evaluate whether a tool actually fits. And then you've got to have straightforward conversations with teachers about what you're asking students to do when you introduce these systems. What is the red, yellow, green stoplight system, for example, that will guide their use of the AI, and how will their completion of the assignment stay true in terms of its alignment to the standards and to the pedagogical purpose and goal of the assignment. So that's this week's news. Love to know which of these themes are resonating with you. For example, what's the burden of proof in your district? How public are the conversations that you're having about the criteria you're applying in the decisions you're making to evaluate a product, and whether you're going to escalate its implementation, pause its implementation, even roll back? How often do you run a pilot and decide not to pursue, for example? Please share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for taking a minute with us today on AI in the Classroom Daily, and we will see you again with a fresh episode on Monday. Have a great weekend.